Hi, this is Adam Feinberg, and you are listening to the Harlem Stories podcast.
Hi, this is Mark Becker.
Mark, thank you so much. Great co-host as always. Always look forward to your banter. I think it kind of adds a whole nother dimension to this podcast.
Thank you.
So going forward over here, our topic today, we're going to talk about Sugar Hill, the sweet hill of success. So Sugar Hill was, is actually a historic district, but ultimately it's got a lot of connotations for the African American community. One thing that we are going to discuss is ultimately Hamilton Heights. It's the northernmost section of West Harlem. Within the neighborhood, there's two distinct historic districts, potential third, which encompasses almost the entire neighborhood that's proposed right now. But right now, the two historic districts include the Hamilton Heights Historic District, sometimes referred to as the Hamilton Grange Historic District, and the Sugar Hill Historic District and District Extension. While the official district is defined with very specific buildings, broadly speaking, I tend to say that Sugar Hill is largely defined as 145th Street to 155th Street. Some people will tend to include also up to the Morris Jamel Mansion at 160th, Edgecombe Avenue to the east, and the western border is between Amsterdam and Convent, roughly.
Isn't there a movie with Wesley Snipes called Sugar Hill?
There is a movie with Wesley Snipes, called Sugar Hill. And actually, ironically, it takes place in Central Harlem, not in Hamilton Heights and the Sugar Hill neighborhood. But yeah, there's other pop culture references we'll talk about as well. So, obviously, that northern extension over there is sometimes, not necessarily considered Sugar Hill, but others do. Controversial, but, we'll move past that. Sugar Hill got its name in the 1920s when the neighborhood became a popular place for wealthy and successful African Americans to live during the Harlem Renaissance, which, right now it's gaining a lot of interest in today in the Harlem Renaissance. And it was known as the sweet life to live on the hill. There were a great number of prominent African-American residents, including W.E. Du Bois, Justice Thurgood Marshall, Adam Clayton Powell Jr., Congressman, Duke Ellington, Cab Calloway, Walter Francis Wright, Willie Mays, Frankie Lyman, and Arturo Schomburg. And that's the same Schomburg as we know as the Schomburg Center on 135th Street and Lenox. So there's currently a library and, containing all the historic, African-American prominence of Harlem, contained within that library. And it's not just the residents, it's their famous friends that have visited and spent significant amounts of time in the neighborhood. Just about anybody that was well known during the height of the jazz era spent some time in Sugar Hill. There were lots of clubs, and I think that'll be a topic of a whole different episode about some are lost, and that won't be easy to find information on all these clubs, but we do know they exist, and in some cases the signs are still outside the buildings. So we know a little bit, but not a lot on some of these, but then there's others that are larger. But, so you can still see some remnants of those clubs that were once located there. Langston Hughes wrote about the affluence of the neighborhood in his essay Down Under in Harlem, published in the New Republic in 1944. An excerpt that I was able to find on it. Don't take it for granted that all of Harlem is a slum. It isn't. There are big apartment houses up on the hill, Sugar Hill, and up by City College. Nice high-rent houses with elevators and doormen, where Canada Lee lives, and W.C. Handy, and the George S. Scheilers and the Walter Whites, where colored families send their babies to private kindergartens and their youngsters to ethical culture school. Obviously, this has changed quite a bit over the years, with parts of Harlem having $5+ million properties.
Right.
So obviously not the slums that Langston Hughes had discussed.
Right.
quite a bit of a change. But the architecture of the buildings here are beautiful and just worth walking the neighborhood and enjoy the scenery. Some of the more well-known properties include the James Bailey Mansion. And, most people, they don't recognize who James Bailey is until I start saying, I'm like, oh, he was partners with P.T. Barnum, and together they formed the Barnum and Bailey Circus. And it's a single-family, unattached mansion. It's got these amazing stained glass windows designed by a cousin of Louis Comfort Tiffany, and were designed in the shapes of circus animals, and along with a almost like king-like turret, castle-like turret, I should say. When the house was initially constructed, and this is all in the Sugar Hill Historic District today, when the house was originally constructed, Bailey thought this was going to be the next big neighborhood, and thinking it was kind of like the billionaire's row of its day. It didn't quite kind of come out that way, but it's still beautiful, beautiful home. And over the years, it had changed hands. At one point, it was actually being used as a funeral home. And the home came up in poor shape when it came up for sale at the beginning of 2008, before the housing market collapsed. Now, amazingly, they were originally asking $10 million for the home. And that's the fact, despite the fact that it needed millions of dollars worth of updates and restoration work. Because the sale ultimately happened after the housing market had collapsed in 2008, it wound up selling for a total of $1.4 million in cash. That's an 86% discount from the original asking price. I mean, when do you hear that in Manhattan? Crazy stuff.
Yeah.
But the new owners, they've been restoring the property and have it available for rent for filming. So there's a filming company that specializes in obtaining permissions from owners, and they have like a list and there's several homes uptown included on that list for that are available for rent for filming.
Hey, if there's a structure, someone's going to find a way to use it.
Yeah, exactly. And New York City is a kind of a mecca for filming, so that makes sense. 409 Edgecombe. I'm not going to say too much about the board. I'll just say it's my nemesis. I've had a board turned down on it. They are a very strict board, and they do tend to reject the vast majority of buyers.
Wow.
So, that said, they still do have a lot of needs for renovation and restoration work. But the building itself, it was designed by the pre-war architects Schwartz and Gross, and Schwartz and Gross designed some of the most amazing interior buildings. So naturally, any of their buildings, and I know a few HDFCs that were actually converted, that were originally Schwartz and Gross designed buildings. These are the buildings that are in demand in the HDFC world because they're large, they're gorgeous apartments, and even when they need total gut renovation, it's like the bones are there, and they're definitely worth restoring. Absolutely beautiful. But it was originally known as the Colonial Parkway Apartments, and it was built with the expectation that residents would be New York Dodgers, since the ball field was just a couple blocks away on the Polo Grounds.
Wow.
So the expectation was it was originally going to be used by the members of the sports club. The Dodgers, I think, as most people know, they eventually moved out of New York, and the Polo Grounds Stadium moved to become Yankee Stadium across the Harlem River. So not exactly a surprise there, and we talk more about that going forward. The park across the street was back then known as Colonial Park, and it's since been renamed as Jackie Robinson Park. Quite fitting considering you had the baseball stadium, just a few blocks away. And even now, today, just across the 155th Street Bridge.
Yep.
So, ultimately, I think that's quite appropriate. The building has had a long list of well-known residents: George Gershwin, Babe Ruth as an infant, W.E. Du Bois, NAACP founder Walter White, Supreme Court Justice Thurgood Marshall, and so many other famous names. Also contained within Sugar Hill, and again, this is where I say like the address is, it's controversial whether it, because it's further north, 555 Edgecombe, but nobody debates the history there. It's also known as Triple Nickel or the Paul Robeson residence. It's north of that 155th Street border, but I don't know, a lot of people do consider that Sugar Hill. And it's most readily identifiable because it's also across the street from the Morris DeMille Mansion, which we've also discussed in other episodes. Like 409 Edgecombe, Triple Nickel was designed by Schwartz and Gross as well, although that actually, I believe, is a rental building. While many of the buildings had unremarkable exterior designs that were built by Schwartz and Gross, the residents loved the space and flow of their interiors, which goes back to what I was saying before. Famous residents of Triple Nickel have included Count Basie, Joe Louis, Paul Robeson, and so many more jazz legends. For the past 30 years, and this is something I believe still continues to this day, every Sunday, resident of the building, Marjorie Eliot, often as addressed as Miss Marjorie, and her son Riddell have provided free jazz for New Yorkers in their living rooms, seating up to 40 people. They do this routinely and just invite the public into their home.
It's pretty cool.
She's been doing these parlor jazz sessions as a tribute to her son Philip, who died in 1993. The show, if you're going up there and you want to go and try and explore it, the show starts at 3:30. Marjorie and Riddell play jazz on the piano, as she calls it, African-American classical music, and sometimes there might be accompanying musicians. They serve water and sometimes juice with granola and some other small snacks. There's also a tip jar, and obviously now going to modern day world, Venmo, but nobody will pressure you to donate. But considering that the fact that they're opening their home to the world every week, I wouldn't hesitate to tip.
Yeah, you got to be generous in that situation.
Yeah, I mean, how amazing is that? I mean, I think that's one of the true treasures of New York.
Sure.
So, pop culture references for the neighborhood, Taking the A Train by Billy Strayhorn. That was the signature tune of the Duke Ellington Orchestra. And they meant, getting off at 145th Street Station, right in the heart of Sugar Hill, for the sweet life. Claudine, the movie, and I actually saw it, and I recognized a couple of the streets in the filming. It was filmed in Sugar Hill in 1974, and it starred Diane Cannon and a very young James Earl Jones, before he became Darth Vader, of course. Exactly. So there's also, by the Sugar Hill Gang, Rapper's Delight. And it's worth noting that Rapper's Delight was the first rap single to become a top 40 hit on the Billboard Hot 100, performed by the hip-hop group, the Sugar Hill Gang. Although, ironically, they're actually from Englewood, New Jersey.
That's not a bad town.
Yeah, not a bad town, but obviously they wanted to give themselves some street cred, by calling themselves the Sugar Hill Gang.
Yeah.
Actually, it was the woman that, I think her name was Sylvia Robinson, and she was known for that song. I forgot. It was used in Dirty Dancing, with Romeo, how do you call your lover boy? Come here, lover boy. Anyway, so, Sylvia Robinson, she was the producer, and she actually, founded these guys and named them the Sugar Hill Gang. So that's considered like, one of the key songs in the history of the hip hop world, that really kind of kicked it off and made it, into pop culture.
Absolutely.
Godfather of Harlem, which makes sense, has filmed in the neighborhood, starting in the first episode in the series and in the very beginning of the show. So initially they filmed it. Law and Order SVU. Now, we had discussed about the Bailey Mansion earlier, season 20, episode 10. It features two brothers, Judd Hirsch and Wallace Shawn, that actually live in the James Bailey Mansion. And, much of the episode, the house plays a starring role. So, just a few things of pop culture. I always try and, get as much pop culture into these episodes as much as possible and try and relate it to, modern day, and things that, I think will entice people.
Absolutely.
Awesome. Well, thank you again for joining us. This is Harlem Stories, and we hope to bring you lots of great content. Have a great day.
Thanks, everyone.